So hello, I am Paula and I'm an employer branding specialist at Version 1. We are a consulting firm that partner with Oracle, AWS and Microsoft. I'm based in their Dublin office, but we do have teams in London, Redditch, Kent, Edinburgh and Belfast too. So some of you may have heard of us. So today I'll be running through a bit of a deep dive into EVP. And we'll cover tips when creating your EVP, embedding your EVP internally, promoting it externally, and then how to measure success. So we will dive right in. So let's just recap a little bit on what EVP is, just following on from William and looking at it in a formal sense. So an employee value proposition then is the set of attributes that job seekers and employees perceive as the value that they gain through working at your company. And it outlines the expectation that the employer has for its employees, but also what the employees expect in return. So therefore, an EVP can be explained to your wider stakeholders as the unique set of benefits that employees receive in return for the skills and the experiences that they bring to your company. So from this perspective, then, an EVP can contain aspects of, the company life, internal culture, advantages for working for you, maybe commonly shared values among your employees, and then aspirations and goals for what the company wants to accomplish and stand for in the future. And it really, should help to answer the question, why would anyone want to work for your company? And, it gives an overview of what you can offer potential candidates outside of the standard salary expectations. So, in the early days within any organization, new hires do find themselves asking if the role lives up to their expectations, or whether they've been, missold any aspect of the organization. And this is where a clearly defined EVP really plays a vital role. So there are some key factors to consider when you set out to establish your EVP. Some of these ideas on this slide might help you to define yours in more detail if you're unsure where to begin. So these are the 5 key elements. So we have, Yeah, so it includes overall company culture, work environment, career prospects, compensation, and benefits. So when you sit down to create, a unique EVP, it really is all about assessing the core strengths of your organization and identifying those different elements that come together to make your company a great place to work. And if you're looking to create an EVP for your organization, I really would highly recommend making a checklist of all of the components in your company similar to the one on screen here. Go through them and determine the extent to which your company currently offers each and how you can market it externally. So for example, my workplace promotes a statement within our EVP that says, we're a great place to work, not an easy place to work. And we go on then to explain, we expect dedication and hard work for the rewards that we offer you as an employee. So in that sense then, do try to translate these factors into statements that candidates can quickly understand and relate to. Do also try to remember though that it is important to be, objective and to honestly assess what your company is currently and what it isn't as well, and what it does and doesn't offer under each of these headings. Any company who, isn't able to compete at the top end of the salary spectrum can still attract and retain talent by getting the blend of other characteristics right in their messaging. These points on screen at the moment, they display the rewards people want most and are willing to trade salary for. So things like, open door management policy or regular career development opportunities, things like that. So, by being honest in your assessment of your EVP, you're less likely to incur a mismatch between what you think your EVP is and what your employees actually say it is. we've all seen employers who rave about their workplace online, but then they get torn apart for their, false advertising or broken promises on Glassdoor by their disconnected employees. So don't be that company. There is no harm in admitting, for example, that you're not a 9-to-5 type workplace, or that formal attire is essential workwear in your company. An EVP is as much about defining what you're not as much as it's about defining what you are as an employer. And all of these elements you see here add up to providing your current employees with, an experience that matches their expectations of you as an employer. And when these points are honest, they become the reasons why employees are attracted to work in your company in the first instance. And this honesty obviously then will attract new talent, and it'll enhance the reputation of a business as a desirable place to work more broadly as well. So I've heard of companies creating their EVP just based on strategy and marketing messages. And I wouldn't suggest, just from experience, that this is the way to go. You also want to leverage the data that you have to hand via your people, and really incorporate that authentic information and feedback in your EVP. So doing this doesn't actually have to be hard. It just takes a little bit of time. There's plenty of ways to discuss with employees what they see as the rewards for working at your company, what they like about the workplace and what bothers them. Things like surveys, questionnaires, focus groups can give the strategy a voice. And even your people managers, they're on the front line every day with your staff, and they might be able to offer you insights into, the positives and negatives that they're hearing from people daily. And if done right, this research can really give you the tool to respond to employee needs and synchronize both your internal and external brand, so that your whole team is on one page for the success of your company and the success of your EVP as well. So EVP can also help you to do some internal reflection, in order to better communicate with your target job seeker market. Listening to feedback from employees can enable you to know what your top attraction drivers are, as well as your top attrition drivers. And it can also allow you to garner what the main external perceptions of your company are. You can then set about addressing them within your EVP and your employer brand. So for example, you might discover that your top attraction drivers are your annual leave policies. So you might want to incorporate a more, focused promotion on that externally, or talk of it more in job specs. Knowing what triggers people to leave your business then is important too. And if it's not something you can address, or if it involves changes at a board level that may take significant time to implement, like say changes to annual leave volume across the board, then you can curate a strategy around it and avoid promoting it as a benefit externally. It's almost better not to address your shortcomings rather than lie about them. And if you talk with your new hires about their initial perceptions of the brand before they were hired, you can also assess areas of focus that you want to work on. And actually another helpful way to kind of garner external perceptions of your brand is to really leverage the feedback from any candidate who actually decides to work with another firm over your own when deciding between two offers. You should have a mechanism in place to find out what you did or didn't do that actually swayed them into that decision. So once you have all these elements together, you can bring them to, into one cohesive message. I just picked one example here. It's only a minute and a half, but I think it's a really strong example of this, and it's from Dell. So we'll watch this and we'll just have a discussion of it afterwards. Hopefully you can all hear that.
Are you ready to grow your career at a place that's dedicated to providing real growth opportunities? It's time to consider a career at Dell. Here, you'll find a place that hires and develops the best and brightest people and presents them with challenging, rewarding work that makes a real impact. This is a workplace where a higher standard of excellence isn't just talked about, it's lived and exceeded. We invest in our teammates and develop inspiring leaders to help cultivate a winning culture. A culture where smart minds and cool people collaborate and lead us to breakthrough innovations and team victories every day. We recognize and reward entrepreneurial spirit and integrity. We do things a little different here, but as a founder-led company with the resources of a large corporation, we do them thoughtfully and well. We don't believe in strict hierarchy. We're open and transparent, and we've been named one of the world's most ethical companies 5 years running. All the while, we remain committed to our communities and our planet. Whether you're looking to sharpen your skill set, deepen your knowledge, or try something new, there's an opportunity for you to do it here at Dell. We trust our leaders to give their teams the option to work when, where, and how they work best, if possible. So come join us. We welcome teammates of all identities and backgrounds. You'll do big things with great people and be part of a company that's shaping the future and making an impact across the globe. Does this sound like you? Visit Dell.com/careers and let's see if we can't start something big together.
So, we can tell then that, Dell's EVP, and this is a dedicated EVP video, it's literally titled that, and its focus was purely on that for external audiences. So, after watching it, you can tell that their EVP consists of, several key elements like an entrepreneurial culture, a focus on inspiring leaders, and then, a commitment to community and the environment. And while you can say that none of these elements are particularly unique to Dell, the brand does benefit by communicating these factors in an honest way so that viewers can decide easily after watching it whether Dell's EVP matches what they're looking for in an employer. So when you're at the stage then of embedding your EVP, you want to instill it across your organization before going externally. So here you want to leverage your internal communications to align your whole team and to make sure that your people are on board with what you're claiming your experience is to external audiences. And you can do this through things like company blogs, newsletters, email, town halls, and videos from senior stakeholders. And working from the inside out, then you need to sell your employees on your plans as much as you need to convince external candidates. So you want to make your EVP and your employer brand visible through the employee experience and add authentic, real feedback from the people that you employ. A positive employee experience can reduce turnover, and it really helps to attract additional talent to work for you via things like positive word of mouth of your current employees. They become advocates of your brand and promote the idea of working for you. They talk about it online, they might attend events on your behalf, and then they participate in marketing for you and can share their thoughts and ideas about how the company might be able to improve. So embedding your EVP also means working directly with your service lines as well to make sure that your specialists in all areas are actually able to convey your brand effectively when talking with either prospective clients or candidates as well. So that's something that might take a little bit of time and a little bit of buy-in as well. An example of a company that does this excellently is Adobe. They have a microsite called Adobe Life dedicated to their employees' lived experiences day to day, and they encourage participation in this through simple efforts like employee competitions, fun videos, posters, and swag. And if your post or picture gets the highest engagement in the month, you win a little prize, things like that. And they encourage their advocates to write blogs, share content on their social networks, and then present at conferences on the brand's behalf. Um, and they have a massive online following. I think yeah, so they have a massive online following. And while most of these, are passive viewers of their Instagram hashtag, efforts like these do help their people to engage with more informed, better qualified followers of their brand so that when they do have an open opportunity or a hard to fill position, people are listening. And that's the key thing. So while some of you might be, a little bit skeptical about employee advocacy, I have included some stats. Oh, are we? Yes, we've included some stats here. Um, you know, just to They're sourced from LinkedIn, and I think they're just very compelling for your external marketing strategies in this context. Firstly, the number one obstacle that candidates experience when searching for a job is actually not knowing what it's like to work for an organization. And this is where employee advocacy and really telling your people stories is so important. People don't necessarily remember facts, they remember stories. Um, and candidates, the employees act as a barometer of trust for them and for your brand. And when you see stats like these, where look, 3 out of 4 candidates consider elements like this before applying, it really is so important. If you're not engaging your people as part of your EVP strategy, then you really, really are missing out. So when you want to communicate your EVP externally, then it's important to have a recruitment or careers related content strategy to surround it. Don't just present it in isolation. Back it up by showcasing rewards for hard work at your company. Maybe discuss key CSR initiatives or diversity inclusion initiatives. Um, a thing we do a lot is pivot customer content. So it's read from the voice of your employee and the innovation that they implemented. And you can even present things in the form of, a day in the life at your company as well. So it can be hard to know how exactly to communicate your EVP to external audiences once you've defined it, which we do know. However, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be displayed clearly in a section of the careers page, or even a small paragraph or just a few lines somewhere where your candidates are likely to see it. And you can either inject it throughout the career page design as well. It may be in the form of perks, or in job descriptions, quotes, or video series, things like that with employees. The format is not as important as the message itself. Talent picks you, and it really is a candidate driven market and a job seekers market at the moment, and they look for meaningful positions that grow them both professionally and as individuals. So as long as candidates coming to your career page understand what advantages they would get from joining your company, then the EVP has played its role. So to maintain good candidate experience, your career site should also address candidate queries that maybe might not be included in a typical job spec. Things like, for example, displaying your equality policies or discussing your wider efforts in the community. Um, this information should be trustworthy and transparent. No candidate likes to read, for example, that they apply to you because your career site said that you pay for upskilling courses, let's say, only for them to then find out at a late interview stage that, this is only applicable after 5 years at the company. Which would clearly put them off. So in this sense, then set clear expectations of the candidate and help them to form clear expectations of you as an employer too, from both your EVP and associated career side as well. Some pages that do this really well, just some examples here. So Dove responded to feedback that women didn't feel represented, and they created this Show Us campaign in collaboration with Getty Images, and the latter saw a 35% increase in women in their workforce following this campaign. Spotify then has a really good candidate experience, from start to finish. Their copy throughout is really on brand, and it keeps with the music theme throughout. So if you have your niche, if you know what your brand is, stick with it. So in Spotify's sense, potential candidates are invited to go backstage to get more information on their employer brand and EVP. SAP wanted to promote their belief that, as an employer, you should treat the whole person and not just the person who comes to work every day. So they did this through visuals like this on their career site, and they combine these really strong visuals with real employee stories on what success means to them. Then skipped one. Vodafone site is full of strong content, as you can see here, and they highlight their diverse and inclusive workforce through images like this. And then lastly, FedEx, they promote their staff voices as the main way to communicate with visitors on their career site. So they display, an array of stories, and some of them are shot imperfectly. It's blurred, or it's done on their phone. It's not perfectly edited and it's clearly not scripted, and that's really nice to see, and it adds, to the authentic vibe of the page as well. So when you're promoting your EVP externally, it's important to consistently ask yourself, what actually are candidates looking for? And the results might surprise you. So according to CIPD's recent Good Work Index, the 7 dimensions of job quality are these, and they are pay and benefits, employee contracts, work-life balance, the nature of work, relationships at work, employee voice, and health and well-being. And I'll admit several of these personally, I would forget to include across a career site, or maybe even in a job description. So I did find these insights very interesting, and they could form a nice basis for a job spec template refresh for you guys, maybe, to better engage your candidate going forward, because often job specs are the first impression that a candidate gets about your business. So why not take the opportunity to include as much relevant detail as you can that will entice them to apply? Some good ideas there. And then one thing that I haven't mentioned is, of course, that you need to and measure some more. So, make measurable goals and targets from the outset. You should know where you are now in terms of the metrics like these that are listed, and then the KPIs of where you want to get to. So any campaign really needs to know what its aims are, and whether it's better retention, recruiting, engagement, or all of them combined. You need to make measurable milestones to spot your success, or find where your managers or your messages need to be managed and improved. And your EVP can sometimes be hard to quantify outside of your team, or for wider stakeholders. So stats like an increase in application, falling attrition, maybe a lower cost per hire, they can really help to engage stakeholders in the wider business about the positives of introducing a solid EVP to your organization. And do remember to keep reviewing your EVP from time to time. I would suggest once a year. People's expectations change over time, and even if your current EVP seems perfect, a fresh take is always important, just to make sure that it's still working, and the metrics are on target as well. So just some key takeaways then. So your EVP should show what you are and what you're not, and it should set realistic story of what it's like to work for you. So when promoting your EVP, that's still, yeah, sorry. Start from, the inside and work your way out. Leverage your people wherever you can and tell real authentic stories. And then lastly, measure, and measure some more. And be sure to track the progress against defined SMART goals that showcase your success. And I think, yeah, that's everything there. So thanks very much for that. I hope you found it helpful.
Amazing, thank you so much. But that was an absolute whirlwind of insight and lots of tips and tricks there.
Wasn't too fast.
No, absolutely not. There was just so much to, so many good tips and tricks, and really good to see the story as well that you guys have gone through in some of the bits and pieces. So we have had a few. Do you want me to stop sharing the screen for you?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's all right.
Thanks so much.
No worries. So we've had a few questions come through. So Evie, who asked the question originally about what would you say are the most effective ways to promote the EVP internally, for anyone perhaps who's looking to get started, where would you recommend that they go? What should their first port of call be, if assuming that they have their EVP already defined? How do they promote that internally? What's the top?
Definitely. I would say one thing that's really important is to get as many stakeholders or people managers or department managers involved as possible, because it is one of those branding exercises and buy-in exercises that needs to trickle down from the top. And it is one of those where it can mean everything, and it can be a project for you for a quarter, 6 months, a year. But if all stakeholders aren't bought into it, you're not going to get that advocacy externally from it. So you need people to be able to articulate it. So first of all, I would say make sure you have that stakeholder buy-in. Next, I would measure and look at how you speak in a wider sense to everyone at once. Is it via messages from your CEO? Do you have a weekly newsletter? Things like that, and that could trigger the the engagement of people, and then measure that engagement up with things like polls and surveys. If you're finding the message maybe isn't retained as much as you thought it would, change it up, mix it up, have some video content. I find things like lunch and learn sessions can be really good. Now, obviously, we're not in the office at the moment, but sometimes that can benefit you by being able to get all locations on at once, rather than previously where maybe you had to be in person. So it's just about really driving that message home. And one thing I would say is internally, getting buy-in takes a lot longer than externally. You can hit 10,000 people with an ad externally in a week, but actually getting your people to be able to repeat what you are trying to teach them might take a bit longer. So don't expect miracles overnight. Just chip away at it and measure the success.
Yeah, brilliant. Simon made a really good point that he said the more the organisation is willing to get involved, the cheaper it is. So costs increase when you outsource the problem, and as opposed to owning the agenda internally. So yeah, no, great
Definitely.
point there, Simon. And a final question, the penultimate question: what is it you must do to build a basic employer brand for a startup? So startup, you know, there's lots of positives and also sort of negatives as well. What would your recommendations be for that startup?
Yeah, there's lots of moving parts, and definitely I would say for a startup, if you have the ability, make sure that your recruitment team, your HR team, and your marketing team are combined. They are sitting together, they're talking together, they're chatting through their strategy, because often the recruitment strategy can be kind of put aside for marketing in replacement of lead gen for sales or something like that. And from a startup mentality, it does need that extra help from the marketing team. I would say on a granular level, you need to start off with things like templates for your job specs that accurately represent both your EVP and your employer brand. They have strong call to actions. You are creating your content in the voice of your employees. So, you're actually speaking externally about what it's like to work internally, and measure yourself against competitors. If you're finding that your candidates are applying to yourself and your main competitor, don't be afraid to ask them, why they applied to you. And you see it sometimes in job specs. Where did you hear about us? And the list of the platforms will be there. But don't be afraid as a routine when you're starting off to go a bit more in depth about that. Why did you apply? What attracted you? And it's not just the platform, it's the getting granular on it. It's our values, it's I liked your benefits, things like that. And once you have that data, you create more content around what people liked originally. I would say for a startup as well, social is such an important thing. Make sure you're active and engaging with your networks. You don't have to be on everything. It's better to be good at one thing than try to do everything slightly well. And curate your content strategy around that. Don't be afraid to show your internals. Sometimes when you're a startup, it can be quite, people can be quite protective of, I've only a small office now, or I don't have many people on the team, so people won't want to see a video with just the same face every time. Don't worry about that. People, it does resonate with people, and if what you're offering matches what someone's looking for, it'll work out well.
Yeah, brilliant. And then just very briefly, if you're able to, just explain what pivot customer content is, or how to pivot customer content.
Yeah, I find this really helpful. So it's probably happening anyway from a sales perspective, in that you might be producing testimonial content, customer stories, case studies, data sheets, things like that, anything you might bring to events, let's say. And if it's positioned as a sales pitch, it can be pivoted to then change to the voice of the employee that actually implemented those successes on behalf of that company. So say, for example, you are talking about implementing a brand new methodology for a client. Instead, take that case study, put a face and a voice to it. So Thomas from our QA team was involved in this for 6 months, and then you get Thomas on video talking about the new technologies he used, how he enjoyed the innovation, how he appreciates that his workplace gives him these new opportunities, and how he really enjoyed working with that client and what his next steps are. And then you can even check in with him later after the next project. He talks about what growth has happened since, things like that. So you just take what you have and position it from an internal perspective. And and it can be really, it can be actually, you know, quick and easy to do. And once you do it once, you can make multiple types of media out of the same story. So you can have the video, you can have the blog, you can have the quote, the testimony. You could even do an infographic as well as stats. So one customer story can get you lots of content.
Lost it, and just repurposing that content and just
yeah, exactly, because you know, our candidates aren't going to see the same thing. You know,
yeah.
algorithms make sure they don't. So
yeah, amazing, excellent, Paula. That was really insightful and really interesting to hear
helpful.
some of what, yeah, no, absolutely, what you've been doing. Also, taking inspiration from other organisations as well. So, thank you very much for sharing your story. It was great.